implementing GraphQL for Apache OFBiz. And then the next stop is going to be like what is still missing from this plugin and what we intend to do going further. Okay.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so I'm sure, you probably all have heard about GraphQL, so I'll quickly give you I'll quickly brief you about it. So it's nothing but a new way to fetch your APIs. Probably people say that it's an alternative to REST, but it's completely a different topic altogether. So yeah, it's query language for your APIs. It's not necessarily HTTP based, but yes, you can serve your APIs over HTTP using GraphQL. So to to give you a brief history about it, it started as an internal project to Facebook, within Facebook, and then I believe it was open sourced in back in 2015. So, as I mentioned earlier, it's a way to fetch your APIs. Um, so, what it does basically is that it provides you three query parameters. You can basically use three query parameters to fetch your data. One is the query parameter query itself, and then you can also specify operation name, and then the third query parameter that you can use is variables parameter. You can obviously read a lot about these things in detail on the internet. So yeah, these three query parameters are primarily you can send to your API. So query parameter is nothing but it's a JSON object, you can say JSON string that contains mutation. The other thing it contains is the query itself, um, and the third one is subscriptions. We haven't explored subscriptions in detail yet, and that is one of the things that is still remaining to be done as far as this particular plugin is concerned. So that's about the query parameter. The second parameter is the operation name. What it does is basically that your query parameter can contain multiple queries, right? Multiple queries or multiple operations, you can say. So the operation parameter specifies which specific operation you want to perform. Uh, by default, it performs all the operations that are specified in the query. But if you have specified operation name, then it basically executes only the parameter operations that are specified in the operation name query parameter. The third query parameter that we are talking about is variables. Now, what variables do is basically you can basically provide runtime variables in your query. So basically, your query can specify the variables that it accepts, and then based on those variables, it can the output of the query can change based on the variables passed, right? So and then if we go further deep into what all schema elements uh, that are in GraphQL, we have queries, and then we have mutations, and then we have subscriptions. So mutations and subscriptions are optional elements, and while there has to have uh, query in your schema. So how GraphQL basically works is that it provides you a schema that you can specify all the queries mutations, subscriptions. Similar to, I mean, if you have worked on REST, so similar to what REST provides, like, I mean, if you can have application WDL file, right? So that I'm talking specifically about the JXRS, in JXRS context. So you have to you specify schema in your GraphQL, and then the schema, the runtime environment that you are using. So if you are using Java, then obviously there is a Java implementation for GraphQL. And then if you are using JavaScript or node modules, so there are implementations in those languages as well. So the GraphQL runtime basically reads your schema, and there is a whole specification about what all different types of elements there can be in a GraphQL schema. I mean, if you want, I can go through them. I mean, very brief, but yeah, I mean, you can read about all the elements in the schema. But the three main elements are query, mutations, and then subscriptions. And then within these three top root elements, you can specify the object types, you can specify the scalar types, you can specify interfaces, you can specify um, enums, and basically all all types you can think of, maybe in whatever language you have worked on, or whatever language you have worked with. So it has the ability to allow you to specify all the different types. It can specify the object types that are primarily the you can say the it is analogous to response in a in REST world. So these are the types. Yeah, so these are the types that you can specify along with the interface as well. Um, then if we talk about queries, these are analogous to GET requests in REST world. And then if we talk about mutations, they can only be performed using post requests. Uh, so if everybody is comfortable with whatever I have said so far, we can move ahead with what we have done. I mean, as far as the OFBiz plugin is concerned.
I'm good.
Same here.
Okay. Okay. So what I'll do is okay. Let me share my screen. So are you able to see my screen?
No, Girish, it's not visible. Yeah,
Not visible yet.
yeah.
Yeah, it's coming.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You sure there is no lag?
Hello, Girish. Yeah,
I can see it now.
yeah.
Hello, Girish.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello? Yeah, we can hear you.
You can hear me. Okay, fine.
Yes.
So this is the plugin that we have developed. It's a typical plugin. So I'll just start with the configuration of the plugin. So if we start with the web.xml for this plugin. I believe we should start with what all libraries were used. So we are using the standard Java implementation for GraphQL. So these are the four libraries that we are using. The first one is the standard one, and then the second one is it's very specific to servlet, and then I believe the third one is related to some utility classes that GraphQL provides, and the fourth one is related to Java annotations. These Java annotation library is just in case if you want to develop your GraphQL schema using which probably we are not going to do. So I'll probably remove this particular dependency. So if we come to web.xml, um, this particular library that we are using, it provides a servlet that basically we have extended. This is the servlet. Yeah, so this is the servlet that we have written, and we are basically doing nothing but extending this servlet that this library provides. And the core part of this library is that you have to okay, so so the core part of this library is that you have to specify GraphQL configuration, and this GraphQL configuration contains a schema, and it also contains some objects related to mapper configuration. So it's very specific to JSON library that we are using. So we are doing nothing but providing the GraphQL configuration to the GraphQL runtime, and then we are basically just overriding to get and to post methods that are available as part of HTTP servlet. Now. And so in order to provide the schema, what we have done is we are basically taking idea from Mocky implementation for GraphQL, and there we are basically trying to come up with our own schema language that will so what we are doing is that and this XML file is basically we are expecting this XML schema file to be present in whatever plugin.
Hello.
Yeah,
Hello.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but yeah, your voice is coming in chunks, at least for me. I'm not sure if the other.
Yes, I am facing same. Girish, your voice is breaking.
Okay.
Mhm.
Is it better now?
Seems better, yes.
Okay. Maybe I'll put the microphone very close to my mouth. Okay. So this is the schema file. So every component that needs to define its own GraphQL API needs to have an XML file under GraphQL schema, and then so under GraphQL schema directory. So this is the GraphQL XML file that basically I have written, and it contains it provides you the facility to define queries, and to define the mutations. I'm so far as GraphQL is concerned, so I'm not so sure about the um, subscription implementation. So at the moment, it is only providing the ability to define the queries and the mutations. So the top level element, you can specify the query, and you can also specify the mutation. I have added one more attribute, the expose attribute, that specifies whether you want to expose these APIs or not. Am I audible not now properly?
Yes,
Yes.
Girish.
Just let, yeah, just let me know. Just interrupt me whenever you feel that my voice is breaking.
Sure.
Yeah, and just so you know, along with this particular plugin, I have also included two open source, you can say, GraphQL API Explorer. Probably you have already heard of those uh, IDEs. Let me just start the always. So one of them is GraphQL. That's basically the API Explorer for GraphQL schema. So what it does is basically that the GraphQL engine, the GraphQL implementation internally exposes the schema in the form of schema.json file. So what it does is basically it reads schema.json file, and then it presents you a nice view of the schema. Let me show you. So this is the GraphQL IDE, and you can see that it has read the GraphQL schema that was generated out of the you can say the SDL that we have defined under mutation. So as I mentioned earlier, there are three root types in the GraphQL schema. One is query, and the other is mutation. So if you go in the query type, you can see that there is a product API. And similarly, for example, if you were to write OMS related APIs, or say for example WMS related APIs, you would have separate components for those APIs. And then what those components would basically do is that they would be writing their own XML schema for the plugin that they want to
Girish,
use.
your voice is breaking. We are losing you and could not listen you for about 10 seconds. Hello? Hello?
Hello, Girish, are you there?
Aren't able to hear you, Girish. Girish, are you there?
I
Okay,
just
guys, so I'm presenting again.
Okay.
mhm.
Sure.
Is it visible?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. So yeah, so what I was telling is that if you were to have separate components for say order management system or WMS, you would be writing separate schema files for those components, and those I mean the runtime is going to consume those XML files and generate the XML schema, and then I mean those objects present under those various components. You would be able to see those fields over here as well. So right now I have only product API that I was playing with, and you can basically see these are the various operations or fields that I have defined. Um, so I'll first show you how I have implemented the various fields over here. So there is one object basically it is going to fetch the products in the present in the database, and what we have done is that we have added the concept of entity feature that basically does fetching from the database for the entity. So here I have specified type, and the type is basically nothing but it assumes that it
Girish,
is
hello.
your
Girish, your voice
hello.
is breaking. Your voice is breaking. We are not able to hear you properly. Mhm.
Okay, I'm sorry for the interruption. Is it better now?
Mm, No, it's still breaking.
Girish, just go a little slow. That should help.
Okay. So in GraphQL, you have this concept of data features. So what a data feature does is that it basically gets the request. It basically gets the request for a particular field, and then it determines where to get the value from, right? So that's why we have come up with the concept two types of data features. one is entity data feature and other one is service data feature. So as the name implies, the data feature is going to get the value for particular field of this entity, and what the service data feature does is that uh, you are going to specify the name of the service that you are going to use for fetching the data. So over here, as you can see, I have specified the product suite and specified the entity feature. So what it is going to do is that it is going to get uh, list of all the products present in the database. Now I have specified that it is going to be a list, right? So how it gets translated to the graphical schema is that you are going to say these square brackets. It indicates that the result of the operation is going to be a list, right? So similarly, I have also specified to fetch a single product, right? Now to specify it in our SDL, we have just specified a field name named product, and the type is product, and we are also going to specify the argument that is going to be translated as the input to the GraphQL endpoint, and we have specified that you need to provide product ID and its type is string and required true. What it means is that you have to specify the product ID in order to get the product of the system, and its type is product. What this type product suggests is that these are all the fields, or you can say database columns that are going to be available whenever you specify whenever you are querying for the product. The the third field that I have uh, provided over here is categories. So it is similar to products. We have just specified the type as product category. It indicates that it is going to fetch the data from the product category entity, and its list is true. So it is going to provide list of all the categories present, and then we have specified entity feature here, and entity name is product category. So I'll just show you. I will probably not show you products because I have got a lot of products in my database. I'll show you I'll try to show you categories endpoint. So this API Explorer is very handy actually. What it does is that it has the ability to provide the autocomplete feature. So it is basically reading all the stuff from here. Here you can see the schema, and then whatever fields, whatever queries, or whatever mutations are available, as you start typing over here, it is going to basically show you whatever all the available values. So if you start with product API. So if you start typing C, then it is going to show that categories is available. And then within the categories, you can specify what it is doing is basically that here categories is the operation, and then whatever you are specifying under this operation is these are the fields that are going to be returned by the GraphQL runtime. So if you just hit enter, so what it has done is basically uh, it has fetched all the categories from the database. And since we have requested three fields, it has sent only three fields. If you were to specify that we don't want the primary parent category ID, you could just remove it. And if you hit it again, so it has just provided only product category ID and product category type ID. Is it good so far? No issues with my voice?
Yes, all good, Girish.
Okay.
Yeah, it's better.
Okay. So let's take a look how we can query for a particular category. So this is the category field, and then it specifies that product category ID needs to be provided. And this exclamation mark suggests that this is a required input. So if you omit it, then then you are going to get an error. So let's see how we can query for a particular category. We are going to pick this category ID. And you can specify what all fields you need to include. Okay, category name, and then product category ID, and description. We hit it. So it has basically fetched a single category with the category ID of eyewear catalog. And since we specified these four fields, it has returned all these four fields over here. So this is about the entity fetcher. So in a nutshell, all it does is basically it allows you to fetch data from any OFBiz entity. All the OFBiz entities are available automatically to be fetched. Any questions so far? Hello?
Hello.
Yes,
good.
we can.
Mhm. All good?
Oh,
Yes.
good.
Okay. So what I'm going to show you next is we can have existing OFBiz entity, OFBiz service used as a data fetcher. So I'll show you with one REST API that we had developed for one of our clients. So there was a requirement to basically fetch the product details based on the good identification value asked. So I have converted that particular REST API into GraphQL one. So this is how you can, yeah, you can specify an OFBiz service to be used as a data fetcher. So you will start with the field, and you will be specifying the name of the field, and then the type. This particular type is nothing but one view entity that we had developed. Its name is product and good identification, and then is list parameter is true, because obviously we would be expecting that multiple products will be returned. And then we have specified service feature over here, and the name of the service is search products by good identification value. I'll just briefly show you what this particular service does. This is the service that we had written, and it does nothing but it expects one input parameter id fragment, that would be your id value from good identification, and it searches in SKU, UPC, ISBN, and the requirement was like we had to use like parameter. So I'll show you how this actually works in GraphQL. So I had developed two variants of this particular operation. One was using entity, explicit entity, and then one was using um, a separate output type that I have defined over here, product search by good identification. So if you are aware of GraphQL schemas, so this object is basically analogous to the types you define in the GraphQL schema. So what I have done here is I've just defined a new type named product search by good identification, and all these fields indicate what this particular type contains. So internal name, product ID, is variant, and ID value. These are the four output fields I have specified. So I'll first show you how I have implemented is using this view entity. And if we look at the schema, it specifies that it expects ID fragment, and that too it's mandatory. So what the runtime does is that as soon as you specify the service feature, it basically observes the input parameters for this particular OFBiz service, and then puts those input parameters based on whether they are mandatory or optional. And if they are if for example they are mandatory, then obviously the GraphQL runtime puts required exclamatory mark over here. So this ID fragment, I'll show you the service definition. This is the service definition of the service, and this attribute ID fragment is optional, is false, and it's in parameter. So we'll be putting and then as you type over here, you get the content assist. You can get product ID, product name, is variant, is virtual. See if there is any product with ID value containing 3456. Okay, let me include ID value as well. So there are three products in the system that have ID value containing 3456 in there. And this is one way of doing it. And the other way that I have developed is using an explicit, or you can say a separate output type that I had defined, and therefore I have included a separate operation for that. Such products by good identification will using explicit type, and the request is going to be same because we have specified the same service feature over here. And it has returned the results. Now, since I have specified only 4 fields over here, when you are going for this operation, only though these 4 fields are available as part of the output. So, any other questions so far?
Yeah, Girish, I do have one.
Yeah.
As I can see up here using the GraphQL, so did you observe any performance difference when we fetching or previously we in OFBiz we fetch directly from entities. So when we implement when we implement this GraphQL, so is there any did you saw any performance difference in the operations? So is it improved or anything?
Um, I mean, I haven't been basically able to gauge as far as the performance is concerned. I mean, I was not able to delve too much into the performance aspect of this. Maybe I'll be basically taking up next, but I do know that there are certain problems in GraphQL that is called as n+1 problem. That is something I have to delve more into it, and for that there is a solution that the specification provides using batching. So that is something that I need to explore more on, and that is not included in the plugin so far yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you.
And as I had mentioned earlier that I had included 2 API explorers. The other popular one is Playground. Let me show you. And I believe I forgot to mention that this API is protected by the JWT tokens. I have implemented one authentication filter, and all it does is basically expects bearer authentication token, and it uses the JWT manager that OFBiz is using. So how it is able to authenticate is the fact that in the uh, GraphQL index.html file, I have temporarily included this authorization header. If I remove this authorization header, then it is going to throw error. So this is Playground. This is similar to GraphQL. You can experiment with it more offline. It is, I mean, it provides basically the same functionality that GraphQL provides. So the third feature that this plugin includes is mutation support. So what mutations are basically in the GraphQL world is that it allows you to perform create, update, or delete operations. So the specification mandates that all the mutations have to be performed as part of post request, and any mutation if performed using it, the implementation has to deal with it, and it has to discard the request if there is a mutation request with get method. So one mutation that I have included over here is that to be able to create the product, right? So as you can see that the root mutation type that I have specified here is product mutation type, that basically translates to mutation element in the graphical schema. This is mutation root object type that we have specified over here. Now as you can see, uh, again we start with the field element. We are specifying the create product as the field name. That is basically specifying what the operation intends to do, and then you are specifying entity name here, product, and for attribute specifies that it is a mutation. So when it gets translated over here, you will see that here is the create product field or operation, and then the input is create product input. So it has basically fetched all the fields from product entity and specified as part of input. So if you want to create a product, you have the ability to provide all the entity fields over here, and then it is going to call create product service underneath. I'll show you. We want to fetch these four um, attributes once the product is created. Now you can see that it is reporting one syntax error. It is saying that internal name is the required field that and that you need to specify. So it is showing you error, and product type ID as well. It's a required field. Hence you are seeing two errors related to the input. So we'll just go ahead and provide internal name. So these are the four attributes we have specified as part of input, and let's see the result of this operation.
No worries, it's the nature of demo.
I probably
It had
product ID already. Yes, I'll just remove the product ID. Okay, there you go. I believe the product ID already existed. So you can see it auto generated the product ID, and product name was the one that we had provided, and internal name and product type ID finished code. So this is how basically mutation works. One catch over here is that we we have to basically write one wrapper service on top of the actual create product service that we will be calling. This is I would not say limitation, but it would have been nice that we can specify create product over here directly. One drawback of doing that would be say for example if you wanted to return what all fields were created, as we have specified over here, that we were able to specify product ID, product name, internal name, and product type ID. We wouldn't have been able to provide it because the service fetch, if we had written service fetcher here as create product, then we would have been only we would be able to basically return only the product that that is the output of the create product service that is written in Office. So I'm trying to overcome this particular limitation, and hopefully I should be able to provide create product service here directly. That would be right, and that would be great basically, and would avoid having to write a wrapper service on top of the create product service or any other entity auto service for that matter. Guys, any other question so far as mutations are concerned?
I'm good. We can proceed.
Okay. Uh, so that's basically what we have been able to implement so far. The other GraphQL features that are worth to be implemented is one of them is basically pagination that I am still working on, and probably I can show you. Um, I'm going to have to switch the commit. So as the name implies, pagination is something you would use when you have a large amount of data available, and maybe you don't want all the data available at the same time, and you would like to paginate your way through the data. So there are three concepts. I'm still learning about them, how the paginations can be implemented in GraphQL. So there is concept of nodes, edges, and then page info that you can specify as part of input and output. So I'll just show you. The reason I had not shown you the um, fetching of all the products was because there were a lot of products in my database, and actually I was getting out of memory exception fetching all the products from the database. So I'll show you fetching the products from the database using pagination. There comes this edges concept. So this implementation provides you the ability to provide the paginated inputs. We will be specifying how many number of products you want to fetch. So there is this pagination input, and you will be specifying page size that would eventually be translated to the number of products you want to fetch, or not just products, any other operation you are doing. So you would be expecting a certain number of elements. Let's say specify the page size is 4. And let's hit it. So you can see that it has only got on 4 products from the database. And if we want to actually see how many products are there, I mean the total count of the products, we can actually get the same from this page info element. This is all part of GraphQL specification. um, I mean, you can read in more detail about the concepts of edges, node, and page info. It's a complex concept, and I'm still learning my ropes around it, around edges, node, and page info. So page info, you can specify. I mean, it's a standard element, and it contains total count and its size and say page index. Right. So now that we have included page info as well, you will be able to get the metadata. Hello. Should I proceed?
Yes.
Yeah. So now that we have specified page info over here, and there are multiple fields available. So we have specified 3 fields: total count, page size, and the page index. Let's see what it shows. So it shows that there are actually these many numbers of products in the system, and the page size is 4. and the page index is 0. Page index is basically nothing but the current index of, you can say, the current index of the number of pages available in the total count of in the total count actually. So if we basically specify page index over here, it is going to start with all the elements that are above the page index 4. So you can see the results has changed, but since we specified the page size as 4, it is still fetching only 4 products from the database. There are some other uh, elements you can specify as part of pagination, first, last, but I have not yet implemented it. It is still work in progress as far as the pagination is concerned. So there is first, there is last, there is order by. These are all you can specify as part of pagination input. Guys, any questions so far on the pagination? All good?
I am good.
Okay. So that's pretty much about what all we have implemented so far. There are other aspects of GraphQL schema that is still untouched and yet to be implemented. Uh, One of them is subscriptions, as I talked about earlier. These are nothing but you can say allowing the ability for the server to send the push notifications to client. The client obviously has to subscribe to the subscriptions. Obviously, the subscriptions have to be exposed by the server. What all types of subscriptions yeah, the server is able to handle, and then client can specify the specific subscription to subscribe to. The other thing, as I talked about earlier, was related to performance, and that is um, this brings up the concept of batch fetching. This is also something that I need to implement. Yeah, I mean, these are the two main things that I believe uh, should be implemented and not yet implemented yet.
Cool.
Anyone having GraphQL experience with them? I mean, anyone who is attending this session, maybe they would like to share their experiences with GraphQL. Okay. Um, so guys, I mean, how does it look like? I mean, whatever we have implemented so far, as far as the architecture is concerned, and the way we have gone about implementing queries and mutations. Any suggestions or any improvements you can think of that we need to incorporate, they are most welcome.
Hey Girish, this is Jacopo. I have a question actually. First of all, kudos for a great work so far. Very interesting. My question is about your now that you have played with entities and services as a mechanism to prepare the GraphQL schema, right? So do you feel like the existing services and entities are a good start for the schema definition itself? My question is, I'm asking this question because when we talk about good REST APIs, definitely we can expose our services or our entities directly. But when you actually define resources, REST resources, I mean, you end up realizing that you need to define the resource at a less granular level than entities, and also operate mutation for in the GraphQL jargon. But in general, update or creation on such resources are contain business logic that is should be wrapped probably in a service. And so existing services as as the ones that we have in OFBiz sometimes are not great fit for being used directly for in the REST API. So you mentioned that there is in your implementation a limitation right now because you use the example of the create product mutation, and you say that okay, I wrap up the service into an ad hoc service. I was thinking that okay, and this is a limitation right now in your POC, but maybe when we will go and implement real world use cases, APIs, we may end up implementing ad hoc services regardless, because we will need more business logic hidden to API client, right? What is your experience based on this POC? How do you feel about reusing services or entities in the schema itself?
Well, I mean, it looks pretty much straightforward for implementing like the existing, say for example, existing entity auto services. They look fine to me, and they can be implemented straightforward without having to maybe wrap them around a new service. But yes, I mean, there are going to be business cases, very complex business cases. I mean, say for example, I haven't talked about the nested GraphQL queries. For those type of queries, you would probably want to have new services written, and the existing OFBiz services may not be sufficient may not be sufficient to cater to the complex business needs. So yeah, I mean, the as far as this particular POC is concerned, I wanted to keep it very simple. And yeah, as I mentioned earlier, that I have to basically wrap the existing OFBiz service around a new service. So yeah, I mean, probably when I mean, if we can have one more session, then probably I'll probably be able to provide you with a more complex example of having nested queries. Um, yeah. So did I answer your question?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I think I think that this the work that this component that this plugin that you have provided is really providing the building blocks for playing more seriously with like a real world API based on OFBiz services or entities. So you have implemented the bot fetchers method. So yeah, definitely I look forward at getting some feedback from other users, and I saw your message on the mailing list of Bits mailing list. Let's see if we get some momentum around this. I would be very interested in hearing what others have to say when they will play with the schemas. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Guys, any other questions?
I'm good, Girish. Thank you so much. It was really great, and thanks for all the work you have done. So good for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Girish.
Thank you. What probably we can do going ahead is that as I have um, dig deep into GraphQL, and if I'm able to come up with some new implementations, and then probably we can have one more round of such session, and then I mean that's how um, I see it going forward. Is that okay?
Sounds good.
Yeah, works for me.
Yeah.
Sure. So let me work on it a bit more, and then I'll soon publish when we can have one more round of this presentation. Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you, guys, and be safe.
Thank you all. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye bye.
Yeah, thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.